seated.
Today we'll call Claudia Blake.
Raise your right hand, please. This office whether the person able to give the truth and of the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Could you state your name for the record, please?
Claudia Blake.
And Claudia, you related to Stephanie Lowe?
Yes, I'm her mother.
And when was the last time you saw your daughter?
September 25th, 2010.
And when did you see her?
I took her out to dinner for her birthday since I wasn't going to be with her on her birthday.
What was Stephanie's birthday?
September 29th.
29th?
Mm-hmm.
And how old was Stephanie on September 29th of 2010?
She turned 22.
When was the last time you talked to your daughter?
October 8th, 2010.
And how did you talk to her on that day?
By phone?
Did you talk to her fairly frequently?
Yes.
And when you talked to her on October 8th, what did you two talk about that day?
We talked about, she called me, I believe. Anyways, we talked about the upcoming baby shower and birthday party that her and my son and Shelley Rest, Daniel Blake, were coming to the following weekend, the 15th, I think, of October.
Who was the baby shower for?
My niece was having a baby, and my niece's daughter was turning 2, I think.
What else did you talk about?
Well, I'm sorry, this is going to get a little bit long. I don't mean for it. In 2007, my mom died, and my sisters and I started a ritual by going to Chicago every weekend in the beginning of November. Just a shopping trip, per se. And that year, Stephanie and my other sister that has daughters was going with us. And we talked about that. She said she was probably going to come with us.
Anything else you talked about?
Yes, she said that she was thinking about going back to school. She wanted to be a social worker. And she was going to make some changes. And when she said that, I said, well, you know, you're always can come live by me, because at that time I moved to Waukesha a month or two before that. And then, as always, she got aggravated with me and said I frustrated her. And then we got off the phone.
And that's the last conversation you had with your daughter?
Yes.
Outside of being aggravated about you suggesting she come live with you, how did she seem in that conversation?
Normal. Normal for me and her. Yes.
May I approach her now?
You may.
Claudia, I'm showing you what has been marked for identification as exhibit number 1. Can you tell me what that is?
This is my daughter.
Is that a picture relatively close in time to the time of her death?
Yeah, a year or so.
Yeah, I'm going to ask to publish this.
You may.
So, Claudia, this is Stephanie.
Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about Stephanie? What type of a daughter was she?
Very strong-willed. Very, very like me. We butted heads. But I always say, God gave her to me for a reason. Nobody else could understand her. Nobody else could deal with her. Nobody else could accept everything she was.
What type of person was she in general?
Kind. good. If you were in her life, you were in it for good. She loved with her whole heart. She didn't see flaws in people. She was young, but I believe she had an old soul.
What do you mean by that?
She liked routine. She liked old things. She loved church and rosaries and old shows. I Love Lucy, Gilligan's Island. You know, as a little girl, Gilligan's Island was her favorite. The million reruns. I mean, she just, yeah.
How big a person was Stephanie?
She was shorter than I am. She wasn't even 5'2", I don't think.
We've heard some testimony about a blanket she had, a horse blanket. Are you familiar with that blanket?
Very.
Where did Stephanie get that blanket from?
I bought it for her for Christmas when she was 13. And it was just I see this blanket, I think I'm going to get it for her. Not something she asked for. And it turned out to be her favorite Christmas present that year. Over all the expensive clothes and stuff. And that was her comfort. It went everywhere with her when she slept at friend's house. It was her horse blanket.
She always had it with her?
Pretty much, yeah.
Was it in her apartment or wherever she was living?
Yeah, if she was gonna be on the couch watching TV, it was with her. If she was going to bed, she took it to bed with her. It was her blanket.
Heard some testimony about Stephanie's dogs. Were you familiar with that?
Very.
How many dogs did she have?
She had 2.
And what were their names?
Chewy, and Coco.
What type of dog is Chewy?
He is a long-haired Pomeranian type looking thing.
Do you still have Chewy?
I do. And he is still Stephanie's dog. Yeah.
And how about Coco? What type of dog is Coco?
Coco was a puppy. It was a pit bull, I believe.
And the puppy as of October of 2010?
Yeah, she got it in July
Okay.
as a puppy.
And as far as the dogs, how did she feel about her dogs?
They were her babies. They were her children.
Did she want to have children of her own?
Yes. More than anything in the world. I don't think she could. Medically.
Right. And would she leave her dogs alone for extended periods of time?
Not without calling someone to take care of them or something. Or take them with her, if possible.
Were you familiar with the apartment that Stephanie shared with Eric Mahomes as of October 10th of 2010?
I had been there a couple times, yes.
You were living in Waukesha.
I was. I did spend the night there once.
And when did Stephanie move into that apartment?
I believe in September 1st, around there.
Of 2010?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a yes?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
That's fine. So a little over a month she was in that.
About that, yeah.
How long had she been involved with Eric Mahomes in a relationship?
I believe in about May of 2010. It was fairly new relationship.
How often would you have contact with your daughter?
Every other day for sure, usually through texting. I would make sure I talked to her, and if for some reason she didn't answer to me, I would call Shelley and Danielle and say, have you talked to her today? And if they'd always say yes, they had. Because I know if she talked to them every day, not me, but at least every other day for sure.
Did you try to get a hold of Stephanie on the morning of October 10th?
Yes,
How did you try?
by phone.
Were you able to get a hold of her?
No.
When you could not get a hold of Stephanie that morning, what did you do?
I called Clark Prosser and asked him to go over there. He lived close by.
And who is Clark Prosser?
He's a family friend.
And has he been a friend for
Yes,
a while?
for a long time.
And so you asked Clark to go over there?
Yes.
What's the next contact you had about your daughter that day?
Well, I knew Shelley and Elisa were going to be picked up by Clark because I had prearranged it all, and they were all going over there. And then Shelley had called and told me that it didn't look good, and I should call the police.
And did you call the police?
I did.
And when was that? I mean, not the exact time, but around.
4 or 5.
Okay. About late afternoon, early evening?
Yes.
And what did you tell the police?
I called the regular number, and I said, I'm not sure how I'm supposed to do this, and I kind of told them my daughter's 22. I haven't heard from her. No one's heard from her, and we're worried. And there are people over at her apartment that are concerned about what they're finding.
Now, Claudia, are you generally familiar with the knives that your daughter had as of October 2010?
Yes.
And why is that?
Everything she had in her house was mine at one point. Pretty much everything. When I moved, I gave her everything in my apartment.
I'm going to show you what has been marked for identification as exhibit number 225, and will later be identified by witnesses as the knife blade that was recovered with Stephanie's body. Does this look like a blade from a knife that Stephanie had at that time that you were aware of?
No, it does not.
Take the lamp.
Oh, God, I can't. I'm so sorry.
Okay, take your time, Claudia, I'm sorry.
Oh, God.
You need it?
Would you like a little research, or do you want to continue?
Okay.
Claudia, I have another knife I want to show you. This one is marked as exhibit 226, and this is a knife that a photo of was shown to Shelley Resch. And I'm just going to ask you, is this a knife that
No,
your daughter would have had?
no.
Okay.
All her butcher knives or steak knives were all very rusted, very old.
Okay. Do you have one that maybe was somewhat similar to that?
She did. When she was planning to get married a couple years before that, she had a wedding cake knife or whatever, but in a package that looks similar, but it had a white handle.
some point, Claudia, did you go to talk to the defendant in this case?
Yes, I did.
And would that have been in August of 2012?
Yes.
When you went to talk to him, what did you tell him?
I wanted to know where if he knew where my daughter was.
Did you ask him when you talked to him to tell you the truth?
Yes.
What did he say after that?
He said he would.
Did you ask him where your daughter is?
I asked him, do you know where my daughter is? And
What did he do then?
he put his head down and said, I wish I did.
Did he say, no, I wish I did?
He could have.
Did he tell you when the last time he saw or talked to your daughter was?
He said it'd been a couple weeks.
Do you see the person that you talked to in August of 2012 in court here today?
Yes.
Could you point him out to where he's seated, what he's wearing?
Right there.
What's he wearing? What is he wearing?
Button-up bluish shirt, glasses with orange
The
rim.
identification of the defendant, Your Honor. Thank you. Nothing else, Your Honor. Thank you.
So much? Yeah, no problem. Okay. Good to go. Thank you.
Our next witness is John Karski. Your Honor.
Your Honor, I don't object it, but I move Exhibit 1 at this time.
No objection. It is received.
Raise your right hand. Please promise whether the testimony will give you the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Could you please state your full name and spell your last name in the record?
Yes, my name is John Karski for the court reporter. My first name is spelled Jon. There is no H. My last name is Karski, Kindlarski.
Thank you. What's your occupation, sir?
Detective, Wausau Police.
And how long have you held that occupation?
I've been in law enforcement since 1995.
Have you served that whole time with Wausau?
I have not.
When did you arrive at employment in Wausau, the Wausau PD?
I began my career in 1995, first with the Department of Natural Resources. At the end of that year with the Lyons County Sheriff's Department as a deputy sheriff. I was promoted then to detective sergeant. For family reasons, my wife and I and children moved back here to the central Wisconsin area And so it would have been in 2008 that I began with the Wausau Police Department.
Thank you. As a law enforcement officer, did you become involved in the investigation of the disappearance of Stephanie Lowe in 2010?
Yes,
Were you a detective yet in 2010?
I was not.
What was your title at that point?
Police officer.
And specifically directing your attention to October 10th of 2010, what, if any, involvement did you have originally? How did you become involved in this case?
Myself and Officer Hua Lee were the first two responding officers to this call.
And are you aware of approximately what time you arrived on scene?
It was in the evening time. I don't recall the specific time.
If your records said approximately 7:13, would that be about correct?
Yes.
Well, actually, I apologize. That was approximately when she was reported, so it would have been sometime after that, correct?
That would be correct. I believe 7:13 was the time that initially was reported, and then we responded, after that. So you said approximately. That would be correct.
Thank you. When you and you said Officer Lee?
Officer Hua Lee, yes.
Thank you. Responded, did you make contact with some people at the residence of Stephanie Lowe?
Yes.
And who were those people, if you recall?
Yes. So it was Clark Prosser, Alyssa Clendenning, and Shelley Resch.
And do you recall the address in which Stephanie Lowe lived?
701 and a half West Thomas Street.
Here in the city of Wausau?
Yes.
How were you able to, well, I should say first, what did you first do when you arrived?
Officer Lee had arrived shortly before I had. I parked my squad car, I turned on my video camera system, and then I made contact with Officer Lee and the people I just mentioned.
At some point in time, were you able to go inside the apartment?
Yes.
And was that with Officer, does he go by Officer Hua Lee, or is it Officer Lee? How does?
Hua is his first name and Lee is his last name.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I was saying it correctly. Did you and Officer Lee go into the residence together?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And had you ever been inside of that residence before?
Yes, I have.
Okay. So when you went in, did you notice anything immediately upon entry that seemed strange to you?
Well, I had some conversations with Clark prior to going inside the apartment, and he had outlined for me a number of concerns that they had had regarding Stephanie's disappearance. And so I had already had some things in mind prior to going in.
Okay, and the information that you received from Clark, you weren't using for truth or lie purposes. Was it for officer safety upon entering and potentially where Stephanie might be?
It was more for the welfare of Stephanie to try to determine where she was located or if she was injured.
What information had you received briefly from Clark that you used upon entering or noticing things inside?
Clark had told me that he had gone into her bedroom, that there was a very strong odor of bleach, that the mattress was wet, that the sheets had been removed, that there was a blanket that was missing from the apartment, that he observed what was possibly blood on the mattress, and also there were some other areas of blood that he had observed, pointing out to me a possible shirt. He had indicated to me that it was very unusual for them not to hear from Stephanie, as she had a close relationship with her mother, and that they were not able to make contact with her. He had also commented that she had like a favorite pair of slippers, and the slippers if I recall correctly, one was in the apartment, but one was missing. And so all those things taken together, in addition to some other information that he provided, gave reason for concern that either she was hurt or something had happened inside the apartment or someone had been injured.
Thank you. When you and Officer Lee entered, did you notice the smell of bleach that was described to you by Mr. Prosser?
Upon entering the bedroom, I did, yes.
So that smell was localized to the bedroom?
And there were two primary smells in that apartment that night. There was a dog that had been inside the apartment, and the dog had an accident inside the apartment. And so when you first entered the apartment, there was a real strong odor of dog feces, which was very evident upon walking in. And then as you walked further in, going back towards where the bedrooms were located at, that's when I could start to detect the odor of bleach. And it became much stronger as I went into the bedroom area.
Let's kind of go through the apartment, but what I'm going to do first, I think, you have some training on a system that allows you to make scale models of layouts of apartments.
That is correct.
And could you, before we get into that, because I'm going to try to use an exhibit for it, could you get into what that system is, the training that you've received on it?
Sure. In addition to my duties as a police officer at that time and also my duties currently as a detective, I'm also a member of what we refer to as a crash investigation team. Now, the crash investigation team not only handles motor vehicle crashes, where we go out and do a systematic investigation of mostly fatality crashes or serious injury crashes, but also the documentation of crime scenes. And so what we use is what's referred to as a total station. A total station is a device that's used primarily by survey crews, doing roadway projects, construction crews. Typically, it's a very precise machine that's used to measure items, and so those items can then be placed to a scale, or especially in the construction field, can be used, to properly lay out your roadway if that's what they're doing. Myself and other members of the team were asked to go to the address and to utilize the total station and also some hand measuring tools because of the size of the apartment to make a fairly accurate depiction of what the apartment looked like. And we did do that, and as such I was able to make a drawing of that apartment.
And you completed that process on November 1st of 2010, so it was sometime after that initial encounter with the apartment, correct?
That is correct.
And the only reason that I'm going somewhat on the sequence is just so that we can see what the layout of that apartment is, and then the jury has a better idea of where all of the rooms are. Did you get special training in addition to anything that you've mentioned to be able to use this process to recreate?
Yes, and so as part of our putting together the team, and our team had only been together for approximately about a year at that time, and so I was one of the founding members. All of our team members had gone through some pretty extensive training with the manufacturer and also with a traffic investigation consultant. And so what they did was they put us through a number of different scenarios, a number of different practice exercises, a number of different opportunities, for lack of better terms, to fail, so we could, make our skills stronger, better, and then learn how to properly operate the machine in case we were to encounter adverse situations, for lack of better terms. But by the end of the coursework, you felt very comfortable using the machine, and so I didn't particularly care for some of the training at the time. It was beneficial in the end.
Did you have to receive any certification for it, or they just examine how you're performing as you're going? How does that work?
At the end of the training process, they did give us a certificate, but it was more peer-led, which I really enjoyed. So there was the opportunity for feedback back and forth and for discussions, so that way you could work through the problems together and rely on your other team members to make sure that the product was coming out correct.
Okay. And in this particular case, you mentioned that you used the total station in addition to some hand measuring tools. Just because before this, I hadn't really heard much about a total station, and so maybe the jury hasn't either. Could you describe just kind of what you do to get this creation of this layout?
Sure. So what a total station is essentially a box, and inside that box is what's called a theodolite, and there's also an electronic control measurement scale. And the two of those work together. So what it does is you have your station and you have your known points, and then you're shooting from that station back to an unknown point. And so what that machine is doing is it's taking a look at the distance that the measurement is going from the machine back to the point, but also is taking a look at the slope. And so what's happening is the machine is then computing through trigonometry functions the actual and true distance of what those items are. And in doing so, that's how we can get very precise measurements of those locations. Now, there are some limitations with the machine, and so to be upfront about that, very small locations, such as like the bathroom, for example, we had to use a tape measure, a metal tape measure that we could then go in and measure where items were at and located, which is another accurate way to do that, but was not measured with the total station.
And did you use all of your training on the total station and all of the tools that you had to recreate, I shouldn't say recreate, to create a scale diagram of Stephanie Lowe's apartment?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 222. Oh, I was wrong. It's Exhibit 224. I'm sorry. Yeah, is this what you recognize as the scale drawing of Stephanie Lowe's apartment?
Yes.
Okay. I'd ask that 224 be admitted into evidence.
No objection. Is received into evidence?
Thank you. Now, we were talking about Stephanie Lowe's residence, and if everybody is okay with it, would anybody mind if Ken Karski pointed out on the diagram where he made entry, things of that nature? Would you mind coming down to show us as you're talking?
Can I just move myself so I can see? Thanks.
And can the jury all see if the detective is standing right there? Okay. So why don't you tell us where you made entry into, or sorry, where you entered the apartment?
Yeah, so there's only one entryway to the apartment, and that entryway is located here on the street level. And so Officer Lee and I had parked our squad cars over here, and so there's a sidewalk that runs right adjacent to the building. And so the entry to the apartment would be right there where it says street level entry, where the door is off in an angle.
When you arrived at Stephanie's apartment, before you went in, did you see a dog kennel outside that lower door?
Yes.
Was it to the left or to the right as you were facing the doors? It's probably just easier if you point on the diagram, if you remember.
I do recall there being a dog kennel that was there at the residence. My best recollection was over here to the side, because there is also another alleyway that was over here on this side, but I would probably have to refer to some pictures to be 100% sure.
And just so the record reflects, as facing the door, detective pointed to the right side of the door. Okay, so when you go inside, there's an immediate stairway?
Correct.
Okay. Was there anything that you noticed within that stairway?
Yes, and so as we walked up the stairs, there was a number of items that were on the stairs, mostly like mail items, things that may have been dropped off. Then there was actually a pile of mail that was up here at the top. There was also a chair that was up in here that I didn't record on the diagram. And I believe there was also like a tote box that was also there. But, I didn't believe it was that relevant to the diagram at that time.
Okay. When you got to that landing, is there a secondary door to get inside the actual apartment area?
Yes, there is.
Okay, and do you remember, did somebody let you into the apartment? Did you have to unlock the doors? Were they unlocked? Do you have recollection of that?
Yeah, so this first door that we entered from the street level, this door was open. And then the second door right here was closed and it was locked. And Shelley used either a credit card or some type of hard plastic card to let us in.
Okay. So once you get inside, I believe we talked somewhat about the bedroom and the smell, but it looks like the first room that you come across is the kitchen. Did you go in there first, or did you go right to the bedroom based on what Clark had told you? Do you remember?
I don't recall what we went into first. I know that we inspected the entire apartment to make sure that she wasn't underneath, some covers or underneath something that maybe she was hiding or hurt or injured. So we had searched the entire apartment, but I don't recall what room we searched first.
Okay. And the purpose of this search on October 10th of 2010 is basically a try to locate Stephanie search?
Yeah, I've had calls before where people have been injured or hurt and they've hidden in closets or they've been under blankets or clothes, mostly like in domestic violence cases. So I wanted to ensure that she wasn't somewhere in the apartment just hiding, and that's why that we wanted to do the secondary search. Or even after being told by Clark they had been inside, that was still my concern. Was I just wanted to make sure that she was not inside.
Okay, so we started with the bedroom, so we'll finish there. You mentioned the bed and the smell of bleach, the mattress being wet. I see that you have the bed outlined in the upper left-hand area of your diagram, and then the bed is towards the center right of the main bedroom. Was the head area, based on what you could tell, be up against that right-hand wall?
Yes.
Okay, and then we've seen some photographs of the stain that was on the bed that you mentioned, but could you point to the jury, just in relation to the room where that stain was on the mattress?
Your Honor, may I move the display back just a little bit to be able to stand to the side?
Sure.
Thank you. That's better. Okay, so the bed's located right here. The head of the bed would be right up here against the wall. That stain was primarily in the center part of the bed where it was wet, but there was some fringe outlines that appeared to be a blood-like substance that was more on this side of the bed over here. But then there was also indications of wetness over here on this side of the bed, which would be on the south end of the bed. And then just that real strong odor like we had talked about before of bleach right in this area here.
And you had indicated that the mattress was still wet when you arrived?
Yes.
Okay. Did you happen to notice a blood stain on the floor next to the bed?
Yes, I did.
And so which side of the bed would that have been on?
This would have been here on the south side of the bed, so it would have been this area right in here, adjacent to a pile of clothes. And then there were a couple drops and leading out this doorway.
Could you just direct him for the record?
Yes, for the record, when you mentioned there were some drops and you pointed towards the south end of the bed and then your finger went further south towards the doorway?
Yes, so there were drops of blood that was located on the south end of the bed, then further south of the bed, leading towards the doorway. And when I say leading, I just use that as a reference point. I don't use it as a qualifier which direction those blood drops came from.
Okay. And the flooring in the main bedroom, that was carpeting, correct?
That was.
And then in the hallways, that was hardwood or
Yes.
something like
A
hardwood?
wood floor.
Okay.
Yes.
That pile of clothes that it appears it's in the southeast corner of the room, is that where, I believe you said that you found some blood on a shirt. Is that where you located that shirt?
Yes.
Okay, and do you recall what kind of shirt that was?
Yes, it was a white shirt, like a white female shirt.
Now, was there anything else within the bedroom of note that at the time, knowing what you knew from Clark, and based on your training and experience, that you thought was important within the bedroom?
Yes. So also on this little end table right here on the corner, there was also what I suspect to be blood that was going down one of the legs of the end table. Above the bed, on the wall, was some areas of blood droplets that were on the wall. In addition to this area over here, there was an area that also looked like splatter.
Okay. Before we go on, I just want to point out, for the record, you pointed to the wall that's on the farthest east side, right next to the head of the bed?
That is correct.
And then when you said there was some spatter, you were pointing towards the north side of the bed, up against the far east side, correct?
So on the east wall, closer to the northern end of the bedroom, yes.
Okay, and then you made reference to, is that an end table between the pile of clothes and the bed?
Yes, it's that end table is located on the south of the bed, would be in the southeast corner.
Right above the pile of clothes?
Right above the pile of clothes.
Okay. Were there any other potential blood or anything that you saw on that visit when you went into the residence?
There was also some droplets of blood that were there on this door, and then also some small areas on the wall in the hallway. And so for the record, that would be on the west side of the southern small wall that comes from the main wall. It'd probably be easier to identify in the picture, but
I'm sure we can look at it.
be right there.
Okay, so is there anything else within that main bedroom that we should talk about today? That you can recall?
I recall quite a bit from that bedroom. And there were things that had caused concern, just that the bedding was gone, which I was told was unusual. Inside one of the closets, we found her purse, and we were told that it was unusual for her to travel without a power cord for her phone because she was always on her phone.
Can I stop you for 1 second? You said that you found her purse in a closet. Was the power cord inside that purse?
Not that I recall.
So did you find a power cord? Is that why that you mentioned that?
I remember the power cord was significant, but I can't remember if it's because we found her phone or if it was because we found the power cord. It was one of those two.
Okay. So
But they should have been together, and that's what I recall, is that one was missing.
outside of the bedroom, let's talk about the bathroom next. What did you notice in the bathroom?
So in the bathroom right here, laying on the floor, were 2 wet towels, which I found unusual because most people don't leave soaking wet towels just laying on the bathroom floor. There was a bucket that was adjacent to the sink, so that would be on the east side of the sink. And it was about half full with some type of cleaning product. I found it unusual because there was actually a mop stuck in the bucket. When I clean at home, usually I take my mop out to remove it. So to see the mop actually in a partially full bucket of water, I found that unusual.
Let's talk about that for a moment. The towels that did you say towel or towels? Do you know?
Towels, plural, I believe there were 2.
Okay. Do you remember what color those were?
One I believe was red in color, and I know the other one wasn't red, and I don't recall the specific color. If I had a picture, it would be the first time I
And we'll look at pictures shortly. When you were talking about the bucket, you mentioned that it had some sort of cleaning solution. How were you able to tell that it was cleaning solution?
It wasn't water because it wasn't clear, and then there was an odor that I would associate with the cleaning product inside the bucket.
Was it bleach?
It could have been a combination of bleach and other product. It had a chemical smell to it, but I couldn't say for sure if it was bleach or a combination, but it had a clean chemical smell to it. But I would associate with a clean chemical smell.
Within the bathroom, aside from the clothes towels on the floor, and the mop and bucket. Is there anything else within the bathroom that you thought was worth noting? I guess, was the toilet seat up or down? If you remember.
The toilet seat was up, which was unusual because I know that Stephanie was living with another man. However, he was incarcerated. So it kind of made me wonder, why does a woman put the seat back on? So it wasn't a huge issue, but it was something I kind of noticed.
Did you go inside the spare bedroom?
Yes.
Do you remember if, when you got there, the door to the spare bedroom was open or closed?
I don't know.
But you went in and looked?
Yes.
And did you notice anything strange about the spare bedroom?
The spare bedroom was more or less like a storage room or more of a guest room. It didn't look like that there was someone that was staying there permanently. That was my impression of it.
And as to the living room area, did you notice anything that, based on descriptions to you, or things that you noticed based on your training experience, anything in the living room that was out of sorts?
No.
And
No.
dining room area?
No.
Was there an area on the floor that you recall being sticky?
Yes.
Where
So,
was that?
in this hallway right here was wood floor, and so it was very obvious when you stepped from this divide right here, going from the dining room into this hallway, your feet actually stuck to the floor, and so I wasn't wearing these type of shoes. I was actually wearing, boots, and so there's a much the sole is different, the traction is much different in my boots. And I actually remember sticking as I pulled my feet up. It was sticking to those like cleats as I was trying to pull my feet up.
And just so for the record, that hallway is kind of the area that connects the entrance to the dining room, the main bedroom, and the bathroom, and the spare bedroom kind of all together, somewhat in the center of the apartment?
Yes.
And were you able to make any determinations at that point what the substance was?
I was not.
Just that it was sticky?
It was sticky.
By the time you got there, were there any dogs still in the apartment?
No, the dogs have been removed. I was told by Clark that they had taken them outside.
And you had mentioned that when you entered the apartment that there was a smell of dog feces. Did you notice that there was some dog excrement in the apartment?
Yes.
Okay. And where was that, if you remember?
I don't recall specifically, but I thought it was maybe in the kitchen or dining room area. It was in this section of the house away from the bedroom.
Was it urine or feces or both or something else?
I definitely remember there being feces, but I don't recall about the urine.
I don't think I have any other questions for you on the diagram, so if you want to take a seat, we can look at some photographs. Give me one moment, I'm sorry. I have exhibits 24, 25, 26, and 27. And 20, oh, and 30. I'm going to hand you what's been marked as exhibits 24, 25, 26, 27, and 30. I'm just going to ask if these are pictures that were taken when you were inside of the residence on October 10th, 2010, and then we'll let the jury see them, and we can have you describe what we were talking about in the diagram.
These all appear to be pictures that I took that evening.
Thank you. All right. So for some of the descriptions within the diagram, you said it would be a little easier for you to discuss them in a picture. We'll start with exhibit 24. When we were talking about the hallway, I believe you said it would be easier to see a picture of that hallway area. Is this, based on this picture, are you able to tell which hallway corresponds to which area in the diagram?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Is this the area that you were discussing earlier when pointing to the diagram?
Yes, it was.
What am I looking at in this picture?
So right now, I would be standing in the main bedroom, which is marked on the diagram, and I'd actually be pointing towards the spare bedroom. So you can see that small curio that's there on the upper right-hand side of the screen. That's by the spare bedroom door. To the left of the image, that would be the common way between the hall and also the dining room area. And then to the right of that would be the bathroom.
Okay, and then when you mentioned that there was, you mentioned a couple things. You mentioned that there was some blood on a small wall. Based on this viewpoint, are you able to see that wall?
No.
Okay. Now I'm going to publish what's been marked as exhibit 27. Is this the wall that you were describing that had some blood on it earlier?
That would actually be a picture of the door in the main bedroom.
Oh, that's inside the main bedroom.
So well, it's the doorway there, and you can see the blood splatter right there in the center of the large white line that's going up and down on the screen. There's a red dot towards the center of that, and that I suspected to be blood evidence.
Okay, so that's the doorway to the bedroom.
Correct.
Okay, so when we're looking at the diagram, is that the doorway area that's closest to the dresser on the left side of the doorway or the right side of the doorway as you're facing it?
So right now, the way that picture was taken was I wanted to show the edge of the door. And so what that picture is showing is actually the edge of the door, the flat area between the two panels of doorway.
Okay.
That is actually the center area of the door, which supports the door. It's the core of the door, per se.
Okay. And then looking at what's been marked as Exhibit 30, is this a different area?
Yeah. So that would be the wall that I was describing earlier.
And on the diagram, which wall is this?
So this wall here would be between the dining room, which is in the far right-hand side of the picture, then coming into the hallway, and it's the small little wall that juts out to the south from another main wall that we can't really see from this image.
If I point to the direct center on the far right of the wall, is this the wall you're talking about?
No, the wall that would be right there, correct?
Okay. And that is where some blood was also found?
Yes.
And that's what's being shown in the picture?
Yes, and you can see the blood on the picture.
Okay. And just for the record, I pointed to the far right side of the hallway and the top of the top right side of the hall corner. Okay. You also said that it would help with some pictures of the bathroom and the towels. Is this the way the bathroom looked when you arrived at the residence that day?
Yes, it was.
Okay, and we can all see the toilet seat was up?
Yes.
And those are the two towels on the floor?
Yes.
I believe you said that the towels were, I can't remember if you used the word wet or soaked. How would you describe The towels?
They were soaked.
Okay. And the other towel appears to be what color?
It was like a possibly a light brownish. It wasn't the red color that was obvious to the other color, but it was like an off color and looks like it had been cleaned or washed, before, and so it wasn't the true color of the.
And the bucket that you were referring to is to the right in that picture?
Yes, it is. You can just see the corner of the bucket.
And you said the mop was still in that bucket?
You can't see it from this picture, but the mop is actually in the bucket, and then the handle of the mop would actually be coming back behind the door.
Okay, and actually I'm going to show you now what's marked as Exhibit 26. It's not perfectly clear, but can you get a better view of the mop in the bucket in this picture?
You can see part of the mop, but again, that handle of the mop is actually coming back behind the door. So it was just one of those small mops with a sponge on the end of it attached to a pole, and the pole itself was leaning back behind the door.
On that initial day of going into Stephanie Lowe's apartment, did you look up in the upper shelves of her bedroom closets or anything like that?
The upper shelves?
Yes.
No. Other than to open them briefly just to see if anyone was inside of it, but didn't search it.
Because at this point you're just trying to see if Stephanie's okay.
We were just checking areas big enough for someone to hide in.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I forgot to ask this. The mop handle, do you remember what it was made out of? Wood, plastic, or something else?
I don't recall.
Give me 1 second.
Yeah.
I don't have any other questions for you at this time, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt.
That's okay.
Can I request that those pictures be moved into evidence?
And there's no objection to any of those photos.
Okay, they will be admitted into evidence.
Thank you.
Good morning, Detective.
Morning.
You wanted to speak with Clark Prosser, Alyssa Clendenning, and Shelley Resch before you entered the apartment to find out whether they had touched or moved anything, right?
Yes.
And that's because you wanted to make sure the potential crime scene wasn't contaminated in any fashion.
Correct.
And that's why eventually you and Officer Lee will arrange for some scene security to keep everybody out of there.
Correct.
When you talked with Clark Prosser before making, or at some point in time, whether before or after you made entry, he told you his observations when he was up there, right?
Yes.
Okay. And do you recall what he would have told you about whether the lights were on or not?
Yes.
What did he tell you?
He told me the lights were off and they had turned the lights on in hopes that if Stephanie was to walk or drive by, she would stop back home to wonder why her lights were on.
Did he tell you about whether any of the windows when he was up there, when he went up there, were open or closed? Would it help refresh your recollection if you had an opportunity on this point to review your incident report?
Yes, it would, sir.
May I approach to do so?
I'm going to show you what's been, see if it refreshes your recollection, your incident report in this particular case from your investigation on October 10, 2010. That what you have here?
That is correct.
Okay. And, I mean, it's got a lot of stuff you did there, but I just want to draw your attention to some information on page 3 of 4 that reflects some things Clark Prosser would have revealed to you as you're doing your investigation. You want to take a quick look at that and tell us if it refreshes your recollection about some things he said to you?
Yes, it does.
Okay. Now, within that section of the report that talks about what Clark Prosser said to you was this business about the lights being off and him turning them on, right?
Yes.
Now, refresh your recollection. What does it indicate? What did he indicate to you about the windows in the apartment when he went up there?
So Clark had reported that Stephanie's windows were open. However, all the other windows have been closed.
When you say Stephanie's window, you mean
The north bedroom.
where we found all this evidence of blood that you talked about.
Correct, or what's listed as the main bedroom on the diagram.
Did Mr. Prosser also talk to you about the window treatment, shades in Miss Lowe's bedroom?
Yes, so she had blinds that were located within her apartment, and he indicated that he pulled the blinds up. So that way all the light would shine through, and hopefully if she was driving or walking by, she would stop by to see what was going on.
Indicating that when he got there, they were down.
Correct.
Got it. Let me take this back.
Yep.
When you went into the apartment and you go into that, you get upstairs to the front door and you go into that first lobby, right?
Yes.
Okay. And we see from 224, Exhibit 224, the hallway I'm talking about. I call it a lobby within the apartment, right?
Yes.
That hallway being between the kitchen and spare bedroom, right?
Yes.
And there is, there's a wall, a little wall that abuts, or is part of the closet adjacent to the dining room, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember whether there was any item leaning against that wall? Talking about a mirror. Remember that?
I do believe there was a mirror that was there in that position.
Okay, and did you find out whether that was out of place, was typically hung somewhere?
I never asked those questions or never looked into that.
Okay. You know, before you put together the total station Exhibit 224, you did a rough sketch of this area, right?
I did.
All right. And it actually had a little bit more detail. I mean, it wasn't to scale like this is, right?
So on my rough diagram, there's also measurements that are on the diagram for hand measurements that I would have done to assist me in creating this diagram.
Okay.
That would not have been recorded by the total station.
Right.
And you would have, in your hand diagram, also put some items like those totes that were in the landing and some other things that aren't in 224, right?
That is correct.
Okay. If I were to show you your hand-drawn diagram that you did preparatory to this station, total station diagram, would that help refresh your recollection about this mirror?
Yes, it would.
Okay, can I do approach?
Amen.
Take a look at what I think is that hand diagram you did that led us to the total station. And do you see that mirror anywhere?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So it would have been resting at that on that small wall as you first walk in, right?
No. So where you pointed out there was a plant, and then on that far wall was the mirror.
Okay, I think I might have been mistaken. You're right. When you walk in from the landing down the main hallway, you with me?
Yep.
Right? I had the mirror resting against that wall by the closet, right?
According to my notes, that would not be correct.
Right. It's actually the other half wall when you go past the dining room.
That would be correct.
Okay. And that's where the mirror was located.
Yes.
On the floor.
Yes.
Okay. And again, you didn't figure out whether that should have been hanging somewhere or anything like that.
I did not.
Now, most of the apartment was carpet, right? Well, the bedrooms were, right?
The bedrooms were carpet, yes.
The hallways were hardwood, right?
Yes.
Which is why we know why you can say that area outside the bathroom between the two bedrooms was sticky, right?
Yes.
The living room was carpeted.
Yes.
Had some stains in it that we determined that you realized probably wasn't blood, it was just from use, right?
I did not do any analysis of the carpeting.
All right. Right. The detectives are going to come in and do that, right?
Yes.
The kitchen had what, a linoleum floor?
Yes.
The dining room, wood or carpet, if you remember.
I would like to see a picture to refresh my memory if that would be possible.
At least, okay. The hallway contiguous with the dining area room was hardwood floor, right?
To the best of my recollection, yes.
Let me ask you this. If there would have been area rugs or carpets, pieces of carpet, on any of the hardwood in the apartment, would you have indicated it on that diagram you have in front of you, your handwritten diagram?
The reason why I paused, I'm just trying to think back to the apartment and what was in there that day. I don't recall there being any type of underlayments in that hall, in either of the two areas marked as hallways.
I should have asked you right up front. Do you remember there being a carpet or rug under that dining room table?
Again, I would need to take a look at a picture to refresh my memory.
Okay, and you may or may not have put it on your handwritten diagram.
I don't have any notation of that.
Right. Not on your handwritten diagram, right?
That's correct, but it wasn't a physical piece at that point. So I would have to look at a photograph to refresh my memory.
To see if there was a carpet there on October 10th in the evening.
Yes.
Okay. This bucket that had the cleaning solution looked like it was diluted in some way with maybe water, right?
I did not do any type of chemical analysis or any type of analysis on the substance of that bucket other than to smell it.
Okay, so the analysis with your nose, was the smell from that bucket the same as the smell from the mattress?
No.
Was it similar?
As I testified before, it was a chemical smell, a smell that I would associate with the cleaning solution. What type of cleaning solution that was, I can't tell you.
Right, but it was a chemical smell / cleaning solution that you also smelled on the mattress, correct?
No, the odor that I smelled on the mattress, it smelled like bleach.
Okay, and you're confident there wasn't bleach in the bucket?
There was a chemical smell that I would associate with a cleaning solution in that bucket, but whether or not bleach had been added to that bucket or not, I couldn't tell you. But it was definitely a chemical smell, and that's something that I'm going to be able to differentiate between.
Gotcha. But those towels, refresh my recollection, did they have a smell to them?
I did not smell the towels.
Soaking wet, you said.
Yes.
You know, you talked about some areas where you saw droplets of blood, right?
Yes.
And kind of, for lack of a better description, fringe stained areas of blood on the mattress, right? Kind of, you know, some outlining of some staining of blood on the mattress, right?
I would concur with your outlining of that.
Okay.
I would say that word of outlining would be more specific and correct.
Okay, and then some blood stains on the floor, carpet, by the bed.
Yes.
But in total, there really wasn't, there wasn't a lot of blood. It was just spots, right?
Yes.
I mean, did it appear to you, based on your training experience in a couple of different jurisdictions, it's now alleged to be a detective, that somebody did some cleanup, right?
It would be a reasonable conclusion that there was someone had done some cleanup inside that room.
And with those wet, soaking wet, were both towels soaking wet?
I believe they were, yes.
It would appear, if with those towels were used, it would have been recent cleanup.
They were soaking wet. I don't know how they were used.
The mop and the bucket and the towels were literally steps from that bedroom where you saw the cleanup blood, right?
Yes.
Now, I don't think your hand diagram shows it, but the total station indicates all of the windows in the apartment, right?
Yes.
And there are windows for this second floor unit along the north-south, South 7th Avenue, correct?
Yes.
And that's the street where the entry-level door is, right?
Yes.
And there looks to be 3 windows there per total station, right?
Correct.
And then there are a series of windows for the unit along West Thomas Street, right?
Yes.
The living room windows, which I think are like 2 frame windows and then a big picture window in between them. Remember that?
Yes.
And then the main bedroom, Miss Lowe, has 2 side-by-side framed windows along West Thomas, right?
Yes.
Talked about them being their condition when Clark Prosser arrived and what you saw, right?
Yes.
And then there's also some windows for this unit per total station on the south side of the unit, correct?
Yes.
Okay. There is a larger window adjacent to the stairs that lead up to the unit, right? Maybe adjacent's the wrong word.
Yeah, Jason, I don't think is the right word.
If you were to climb into that window, you could get on those stairs heading up, right?
Ooh. I would have to look at the picture to see if that even be possible. I don't.
Okay. But there is a window along the stairs on the south side of the building, right?
Yes.
And then there's a window, if you climbed up there, you'd be looking into the landing outside the main door to the apartment, right?
Yes.
Okay. So those are two windows on the south side of the apartment unit, right?
Yes.
Now it's second floor, correct?
Yes.
All right. And you didn't do any diagramming or total station stuff for anything but the apartment itself, not the bottom floor, the entire building, right?
Just the apartment, yes.
Right. Didn't Lieutenant Felder take care of describing the perimeter of the building, if you know?
I believe he took photographs of the outside of the building.
So we've talked about two south side windows to the apartment unit. There's a third, and that would leave, that's a framed window for the spare bedroom, right?
Yes.
Did you go in and look at that window at all to see if there had been any forced entry or maneuvering of it of any sort when you were there?
I don't recall there being any type of forced entry to that window.
Did you discuss with Clark Prosser or anybody, be it Ms. Clendenning or Ms. Resch, about the condition of that window when they arrived?
I don't believe I did.
Nobody was really concerned, be it civilians or you and Officer Lee, about anything going on in that spare bedroom. Your attention was directed elsewhere, for the most part. Fair?
We had checked the bedroom to ensure that no one was hiding like inside the closet or underneath the mattress or anything along those lines.
And determined that it was simply a storage area.
Correct.
Remember whether that window was locked or unlocked?
I do not.
Remember if anything about the window treatment to it, whether it had shades, drapes, down or up?
I would have to look at a picture to refresh my memory.
Don't remember as you sit here.
I do not.
Now, in addition, your investigation of this case, or in this case, didn't end with your first work on the scene and then the diagramming. You did some other things at the request of lieutenants and detectives, correct? Other things in this homicide investigation, and what specifically I'm talking about, listening to jail calls or monitoring things of that sort.
Yes, I was assigned that by a captain.
Okay? And in particular, you were assigned by a captain to monitor the telephone calls of Kristopher Torgerson that he was making from jail.
Yes.
And you would have done a rather lengthy report kind of summarizing those telephone calls and chronicling them, correct?
Yes.
And while you were doing that, were you communicating with the likes of Lieutenant Kolb or Detective Buckner or Detective Holtz about the progress of the investigation so you could determine the significance of those phone calls?
I shared with them the work as it was progressing, which would typically entail the report that you described. It was an ongoing document that I was working on, and I would share that from time to time as it was appropriate.
As you were doing your monitoring of the phone calls, were you aware that a central figure in the investigation concerning the disappearance of Stephanie Lowe was Andrea Wadinsky?
Yes.
Do you recall that during the approximate 2 months of monitoring that you did of Kristopher Torgerson's phone? Let me back up. Do you remember the monitoring period being between, not his phone, calls he was making out of jail? Do you remember the monitoring time being between August 2011 and December 2011, roughly? Around Christmas time? Remember that?
I believe it started a little later than that, but I would have to look at the report to refresh my memory.
Can I approach for him to do so?
Right.
I'm going to show you a Wausau Police Department incident report that would apparently summarize the monitored telephone calls from Kristopher Torgerson. Tell me if that's what that report is.
That is correct, and so it says right here that reviewed from 10/28 of 11 to 12/29 of 11, so that the month you had quoted was off.
Right, but the bulk of the telephone calls, there was only really a couple of calls, if you recall, in October. Do you remember?
There were a lot of phone calls that were taking place during that time period.
Right. But what I'm indicating to you that between, or what's important for me, is that between August 24, 2011 through December 27, 2011, tell me whether I got this right.
You don't have it right. That's what I'm saying, is that I didn't start doing that assignment till later on, and so the calls that were monitored were from 10/28 of 11 to 12/29 of 11.
Okay, let me see if this refers. What about this, though? Do you remember also, those are all calls from what, the Maritime County Jail, right?
Correct.
Yeah, but don't you remember also doing some monitoring from the Langley County Jail in August 24, 2011?
Those were not live monitors. Those were copies of the calls that I received from Langley County Jail. And so those calls may have been made prior to when I had started my assignment. However, I didn't review them, as you're stating, until after that time period. So I'm answering your question correctly, sir.
Well, I don't think you're answering my question incorrectly. And I'll make sure we're on the same page here. Let's just talk about then October 28 to December 27, 2011. Are you with me now?
Yes,
that
sir.
Fair?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How many times did Torgerson talk with Andrea Levinsky during that time period? Do you remember?
I don't remember the specific number of times that he called her.
Or I told you, and if you want to count them, you trust me, 55 times?
I don't know, sir, without reviewing the records.
Okay.
Your Honor, I guess I do need to make an objection. We don't have the foundation of the phone number who was assigned to at this point. Based on this report, I guess I think there's just a couple pieces missing.
I didn't know that was going to be an issue, so I'll make that foundation.
Okay, very good.
And it's not. I mean, we've gotten to a point where I think we all understand it. I just think for completeness of record, it should be covered.
Okay. Then make the foundation.
Sure. I'm just going to kind of finger through the reports a little bit, see if we can get through this.
You see that one of the telephone calls or telephone numbers that Torgerson was calling is 715-393-4076. Do I have that right?
Yes.
And at least he made one call on October 29, 2011, one day after your monitoring in Maritime County Jail commenced, right?
Yes.
Okay. Did you ever come, and then there's some subsequent calls on that same day, on October 29th, there's a second call to that same number, right?
Yes.
And a third call to that same number on that same day, right?
Yes.
A fourth call on that same day, right?
Yes.
And a fifth call on that same day. No, that's it on that day, right? Looks like only 4 on the 29th?
Your hand was the way, sir. I couldn't see.
Okay. You do it. How many calls to Andrea? How many calls to that 715 number on that first day? Let me just go get my notes.
For the benefit of the jury, I'm going to count it out together so there isn't any questions. So the first call was 10/29/11 at 12:03. The next call would have been 10/29 at 12. No, that one's not. Next one would be at 1,306 hours. Next phone call would have been at 13:39. The next phone call would have been at 19:40. The next call would have been at 20:08. And then that wraps up the date for 10/29.
And 29 of 2011, a year after your investigation.
Correct.
That, all to that 715 number I mentioned?
That would be to the number 715-393-4076.
Did you later determine that to be the telephone number of Andrea Wadinsky?
I did.
Okay. Take a look at October 30th, 2011.
Thank you, Your Honor. For these purposes, if this is being used to testify, Brown should probably be marked instead of just to refresh recollection.
It should.
Well, I thought he was just using it to refresh his recollection.
Because we're reading from it, so.
Then perhaps he should just count them and let us know what his number ends up being if it's a...
I didn't think we'd have to spend a lot of time. I thought you would have a recollection that for a period of October 28, 2011, for 2 months till around Christmas 2011, Torgerson talked to Andrea Wadinsky a lot. Is that fair?
A lot is a general term, but there were many times that he had contacted Andrea.
Would it surprise you if on October 30th, 2011, it was twice? You don't trust me on that? You need your record? You don't recall that?
Sir, I did not tabulate the number of times that he called a certain individual on what date. I never did those calculations. It's not a matter of trust. It's just a matter I never did those calculations.
So that 60-day period, did he call her in excess and speak with her in excess of 50 times? Do you have the answer to that without studying them?
I do not, sir. I never tabulated the number of times that he had called her.
Did you learn that he was speaking with Andrea Wadinsky on the same days that Ms. Wadinsky was speaking with other members of your department? How about that?
Yes.
Was that significant to you in your monitoring?
Yes.
Why?
Because she had shared information that she had discussed with the detectives.
And she would have done that, if you don't know, just tell me, she would have done that on November 2, 2011?
Objection, Your Honor, I'm sorry.
Well, who's objecting that?
This is my witness.
Your
I'm not
witness.
objecting at this point.
All right.
I don't know, sir, without tabulating the results of that.
Because you don't really know the days she met with Detectives Holtz and Wergensee or Barnes, the whole mix. You don't really know the days.
But the general calls, not a problem.
Sustained.
She was talking to Torgerson on the same day she was meeting with law enforcement. I got that right?
I don't know if she was or she was not. I just know what I was listening to on the phone conversations.
Or now you don't know if it was the same day as interviews. You don't know.
No, that's not what I testified to. What I testified to was that she had told him that she...
Again, we can't get into the exact content of the phone calls. I think there's a miscommunication, and I think it can make this go a little faster. I think what Attorney Wilmo, and maybe if this is inappropriate, please correct me, but it seems as though Detective Krandlarski is saying, I wasn't present for these conversations with law enforcement. All I'm explaining is that what the content of the phone call said would indicate that. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
I have no further questions of this witness.
Any redirect?
No.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hill.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, you got some short witnesses.
Yes, I have a number of them that'll be relatively short, Your Honor, and we'll get through at least one or two of them.
Certainly.
We'll call them with the calls.
Thank you.
And Detective Krandlarski can be released from this.
Yes, sir.
You're released.
Thank you, Your Honor.
state your name for the record, please spell your last name for the recording.
Melinda Pauls, P-A-U-L-S,
And Ms. Pauls, how are you employed?
with the City of Wausau Police Department.
And in what capacity?
Currently, I'm a patrol lieutenant
And how long have you been employed with the City of Wausau Police Department?
since March of 2002.
And were you employed with the police department on October 10th of 2010?
Yes.
What was your position as of October 10th of 2010?
I was a patrol officer working night shift.
All right. And were you working on October 11th of 2010?
Yes.
Were you working the early morning hours of that day with your night shift employment?
Yes.
Were you assigned at some point in time on October 11th of 2010 to assist in the investigation relating to the disappearance of Stephanie Lowe?
I was assigned a scene security detail.
And what was, to your mind, what was scene security? What were you supposed to be doing?
Detective Kinlarski, who was actually Officer Kinlarski at the time, was inside the apartment investigating. So I was outside the front door, or the door to the apartment, just to make sure nobody came up.
And did you make sure nobody came up while Officer Kinlarski was inside?
Yes.
And did you stay on that duty until someone relieved you from your duty of providing scene security?
Yes.
And during the time that you were there, did anybody enter or leave the apartment besides law enforcement?
No.
Law enforcement. And who relieved you, if you recall?
I believe it was Officer Elby.
And that scene was the location at 701.5 West Thomas Street?
Yes, it was.
All right. And the door, if you're looking at the diagram that we have here, and they have these are when they're now working, the door that you would have been outside of would be this door here?
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you. And for the record, I was pointing to the door that's listed as street level entry on the diagram leading to the area that's described as stairs.
Any cross?
Yes. Detective Pauls, about a year after you did your scene security, you would have met with the handyman over at the apartment on West Thomas Street, correct?
No, I'm not Detective Pauls.
Police Officer Pauls.
I was Officer Pauls at the time, not detective.
Okay. Okay. A year after you did your scene security, did you have additional investigative duties at West Thomas?
No.
Okay. Did you meet with a handyman over there?
No.
And for the record, counsel, her husband is Detective Pauls, so it's a different individual.
Come on.
No.
I don't have any other questions. And I apologize.
You get no redirect?
No.
Okay, thank you. Can you sit down? Release from subpoena?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I thought we showed circuit that time. So I need to say the state. Your Honor, the state would call Officer Paul Piscotti.
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you give me the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you.
Could you state your name for the record, please, and spell your last name for the court reporter?
Paul Piscotti, P-I-S-K-O-T-Y,
And how are you employed, sir?
as a patrol officer with the City of Wausau.
And how long have you been so employed?
23 years?
And were you so employed the morning of October 11th of 2010?
Yes, I was.
Were you working that day?
Yes, I
Do you
was.
recall what shift you were working with?
Day shift.
And around 9 o'clock, did you stop at the 701.5 West Thomas Street location on October 11th?
Yes, I did.
And what was your reason for stopping there at that time?
I stopped there to see if the officer that was currently providing scene security for the apartment was in need of a break.
And that officer was who?
Officer Kickhaver.
And again, what to your mind is scene security?
Making sure that nobody comes to the residence or leaves from it.
And did you relieve Officer Kickhaver for a period of time?
Approximately 20 minutes, yes.
And while you were there for the 20 minutes that you were there, did anybody enter or leave the apartment?
No, they did not.
And Officer Kickhaver then came back,
That's correct.
and then you left?
Yes.
All right. Don't have any other questions for Officer Kristopher?
I have nothing, thank you.
Release from his subpoena.
Yes, sir.
And I would call Officer Kickhaver.
You raise your right hand. You solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you.
Could you state your name for the record, please, and spell your name for the court recorder?
Steve Kickhaver, Kickhaver.
And are you currently employed, sir?
No, I'm retired.
All right. And what are you retired from?
The Wausau Police Department.
And in what capacity did you work for the Wausau Police Department?
I was a patrol officer from '86 to 2015.
And were you employed as a patrol officer on October 11th of 2010?
Yes,
Were you working that day?
yes.
What do you recall what shift you were working that day?
Day shift.
Day shift? All right, thank you. And did you have any specific assignments relating to the disappearance of Stephanie Lowe on October 11th of 2010?
At the beginning of my shift, I was sent over to that house on Thomas Street to keep it secure while they got a search warrant.
Okay. And when you got there, was there another officer on scene at that point in time?
Yeah, I believe it was Officer Albee.
And did you relieve Officer Albee there?
Yes, I did.
And while you were there, I think you said you were doing scene security?
Yeah, there's only one door leading to the upper apartment.
And again, that's the door that appears to be on 7th Street?
Is it correct?
And while you were there, did you watch to see if anybody entered or left the residence?
Yes, no one entered or left the residence.
And at some point in time, you were relieved, I think Officer Piscotti just testified for a short time.
Yeah, he relieved me so I could take a quick break. I think it was about 20 minutes. I came back and kept the building secure until I was relieved.
And did you stay there until you were relieved?
Yes.
Do you recall who relieved you?
I believe it was the detectives.
Okay, when they came to do the search?
Yeah.
All right. And during the period of time then, outside of the 20 minutes when you were on break, did anybody enter or leave that residence?
No.
I have no further questions for Officer Kickhaver, or retired Officer Kickhaver.
Nothing, thank you.
Thank you.
And you're released from your subpoena.
Yes, sir.
One more witness, not a scene security, but it'd be relatively quick, which would be Lieutenant Felder, just to ID a couple pictures. I don't know if the court wants to do that now or after lunch. Probably 10 minutes at the low, if it's even that. But I'll move that. Okay.
We'll just do it. Because otherwise, let's do him, and but I want to get the jury to lunch at a reasonable time.
I'll go fast.
Okay.
Lieutenant Felder.
You say thank you so much for the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you.
Could you state your name for the record, please, and spell your name for the court reporter?
Michael Felder, Michael Felder.
How are you employed, sir?
With the city of Wausau, I'm currently as a patrol supervisor.
And how are you employed? And what's your specific rank at this point in time?
Right now, I'm a lieutenant.
And how long have you been employed with the Wausau Police Department?
24 years?
Were you working for the Wausau Police Department on October 11th of 2010?
Yes.
And were you working the early morning hours of that date?
Yes.
Did you have occasion on that date to go to the 701.5 West Thomas Street residence to take some photographs?
Yes, I did.
May I approach, Your Honor?
You may.
I'll show you a series of photographs, exhibits 43, 45, 47, and 48. Can you tell me, just tell me if you recognize those photographs. I'll ask you, I'll put them up and then we'll talk about them.
Yes, I do.
Okay. And those are photographs you took?
Yes.
Let's start with exhibit 43. What does exhibit 43 depict, officer?
That's the building at 701 West Thomas Street, and that is facing west. So that's the east side of the building.
Okay, so that'd be facing 7th Street
I was standing on 7th Avenue,
or 7th Avenue?
yeah, looking west.
Okay. And the windows that are lit up in that on the second floor, would those be the Stephanie Law apartment?
Yes.
Showing you the mark for identification is exhibit 45. Can you tell me what that is?
That's the same building at the same address. It's just a slightly closer view of the same side, and that's also with a flash.
Okay. And again, the windows that we see illuminated would be in the Stephanie Law apartment.
Correct.
Showing you what has been marked for identification is exhibit 47. Can you tell me what that is?
Yes, it's again the same building. I'm now looking at what would be the northeast corner of the building, and I'm facing southwest. Still at about the intersection, probably right at about the intersection of 7th Avenue and Thomas, right at the corner there.
All right. And the second floor windows that are illuminated in that picture, would those be the Stephanie Law apartment?
Yes.
And finally, exhibit number 48. Can you tell us what that is?
It's the same building again. I'm now looking south, so I'm looking at the north side of the building that faces West Thomas Street.
Right. And there's two sets of windows that appear to be illuminated, and then a third window farther to what will be the west, I believe. Is
Correct.
that correct?
Yes.
So it's not illuminated. The two illuminated windows, are those in the Stephanie Law apartment?
Yes,
And the not illuminated window, would that be in the adjacent apartment?
I believe so.
Your Honor, I'd move at this point in time exhibits 43, 45, 47, and 48.
Okay.
They are receiving the evidence.
Do not have any other questions for Lieutenant Claudia? Thank you.
I'll be quick, Judge. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Your job, primarily investigative task in this case, was to take photos and describe the perimeter area of the apartment, right? The outside area.
Correct.
All right. Now, you've been shown some various pictures of that outside, but you haven't shown a picture of the south part of the whole building, right?
I haven't been shown a south side picture, correct?
Right. But you remember, well, we see that this, we're looking right now at the east side, and it has that little overhang ledge between first and second floor, right?
Yes.
At least for half of the east part of the south side, there's also a ledge, right? Thanks.
Looks like you can see a ledge there. I don't recall. I'd have to look at another photograph.
And Mr. DeFord just gave me one.
Okay.
I'm gonna, I should show you first. May I approach?
You may.
I'm going to show you what has been marked as States Exhibit 44. Does that give you a shot of that south side?
Yes.
Okay.
May I publish?
You may.
Okay, this is, I hate this thing. This is exhibit number This is exhibit number 44 that you just looked at. That's the south side, right?
Yes.
And you described what is the east side of this area, so the right side of this photo is the Stephanie Lowe apartment area, right?
Correct.
Okay. And those two windows depicted above the squad car there on the second floor, those get you into the landing of the apartment, the stairway to the apartment and the landing, if you remember.
Yes, I believe that's correct.
All right, now heading west in the building on the periphery, you've got what you described when you did your report as an alcove area, right?
I'd have to look at the report to see exactly how to word it.
Yeah. Would it refresh your recollection?
What page?
It's page 24. Refresh your recollection?
Sure.
If you look? Okay.
Okay.
I got that right? It described that kind of middle area of the south side of the unit as an alcove?
Yes, I kind of try to describe it as part of the design of the building.
Right. And you see on the east side of the building, there's that overhang, what I've been calling a ledge between the first and second floor, right?
Directly over the door, you mean?
Yeah.
Yes.
That exists for the east portion of the south side of the building in the alcove area, correct?
There is a ledge over there, yes.
Right. And within that alcove area, there's a south-facing window that also would lead into one window that would lead into Stephanie Lowe's apartment, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Did you ever get into that apartment?
I don't recall going into the apartment
Okay.
off the top of my head.
So you know those windows that are depicted in exhibit number 44 on the east side of the building, you know those are low apartment access windows, right?
On the east side, yes.
But you don't know if there's any in that alcove on the south side.
Not that I recall.
All right. Well, does your report indicate that there are indeed some windows in that south side?
On the second floor?
Yeah. In the alcove area?
Yes.
And do you recall that in the vicinity of that alcove area and those south-facing windows, there's an air conditioning unit and some garbage cans? Do you remember that?
Yes.
As you remember the outside of that apartment on the south side, if you don't remember, so be it, I just got to ask you. Did it appear to you that someone could mount those units or that garbage can and get on that second ledge? Was that doable?
I don't remember if that was the case or not.
Last area, and then done. I mean, look, that's is really all you did in the case, and you continued on your other patrol and supervisor duties and other matters, right?
Correct.
Right. And while you were doing that in the community, within days after, strike that, you know this periphery diagram or photos and summary you did, a narrative, you did that like on October 10th, the evening of, right?
Yeah, it was in early morning hours of the 11th.
Within a few days when you went about your business doing other investigations, did you learn during the course of those investigations that in the community evidence of what was recovered had already been made known in the community?
I guess I'm going to object to the relevance of that, Your Honor.
Well, I think it could go to other witnesses' knowledge of information we can offer.
I'm not sure of the relevance here.
I vindicated.
Do you want to approach?
Sure. So I have no further questions of you, sir. Thank you.
Any reader?
Just one thing, Lieutenant, the height, if you know, approximately from the ground level to that second floor window. Do you have an idea what that height would be?
Well, I mean, I can take a guess. I never measured it. The door's got to be at least 6 feet or maybe a little bit more than 6 feet, and it looks like it's at least a couple feet above that, so I would guess at least eight or so feet.
Okay. And you said there was also an air conditioner. How high was that air conditioner? What are we talking about?
I think it was just your standard ground unit that was maybe 3 feet at most.
Okay. Thank you.
Nothing.
Okay. Then we will recess for lunch and be ready to start back at 1 o'clock.